So from a design perspective, at least, what's your reaction? I mean, what are the problems or the benefits that you see to a model that takes on a less structured approach? And what does it say about education and traditional education? Yes?
Not necessarily on the design side, but on the, it's like a comment down on the business aspect of a university, of an institution of higher learning, any institution of learning. Where does this leave that?
Can you repeat, please?
Okay, sure.
The question finally is, in the business aspect of the higher learning institutions, how do open courses blend into that? The only reason why people would need to go to a higher learning institution would be to get a diploma, because we can learn it all online, or we could learn it on an open course. But then the only reason would be because the university validates that knowledge. Because we all, here all of us could have that knowledge, but not necessarily have it validated by somebody.
Yeah.
So that would, would that require like a shift on the business aspect of higher learning institutions?
I guess my first question I think would be is, you know, if you're in school, or for those of you that went to university in the past and might not be now, why did you go in the first place? Right? Chances are most people, I would say the vast majority of people would say to get a degree because I wanted a job. Now, there's a few who are more idealistic, and they'll say because I had an insatiable desire for knowledge and I needed to learn and I wanted to be around intellectual peers. I don't know how to address that particular group from the perspective of your question. Those are people who I think will love open web and online content and resources. From a business perspective, though, I think for most people that's already all that a university is exactly that validation. Now, part of the problem is universities have painted themselves a little bit into a corner because one of the needs, and if you look at what kinds of skill sets do you need when you leave a university, and I would say a university, among other things, one of the primary roles of a university is to prepare individuals to participate in society, to be, you know, to preserve a stable society, to preserve democracy, to live up to the ideals of freedom and fairness and justice. I mean, these are all sort of under that banner. That's one of the main roles of a university. For others, one of the main roles of a university is employment, right? I need a job. So if you look at those elements, both the idealistic perspective of a better society and from a practical perspective such as economic gain, then universities are doing a poor job because let's look at literacy. Now, you know, literacy, let's define it. Well, I'll use my definition, but it's the ability to participate in the dominant discourse of a particular era, which meant to be literate in, I don't know, 2,000 years ago might mean you needed to be familiar with Latin, familiar with the Roman culture, familiar with the Roman government structure. That's to be literate within that context. To be literate at the turn of the century, last century, you needed to know read, write, and do basic math. I mean, you know, the strength of the the education system in the U.S. was driven on all children have free access to quality education. So today then, if you said you need to be literate, and if literate means to participate in the dominant modes of discourse in today's society, I would like you to look at the programs and the courses within your existing program. And I would like you then to take those courses and compare them with the reality of what you do on a daily basis and what you see happening online, and to see how those two mesh up. If they're like a regular university, I'm going to say there's going to be a substantial disconnect. Because when the way in which we interact around information on today, at least, not just on the open web, I'm talking in terms of database, in terms of collaboration within a corporation, right? Your chances are you're interacting with people from around the world, you're emailing people from different countries, different regions, a lot of diverse interactions are occurring, with people from different areas of the world. You're also exchanging information electronically, not face to face. You might be on video Skype, you might be whatever. There's a lot of activities that you're involved in, so you're using a very complex set of information skills to just work in a corporation today. And not mind corporation, just work in society, communicate with family. And with those skills, there's a lot of ethical issues too, like Facebook. How much data do they have on me? Am I comfortable with them having that data? Google stores a lot of my search information. If I'm logged into Google and I do a Google search, it'll give me different search results than if I log out of Google, because it knows in the background that I'm in Google and it bases it on my previous search activity. A lot of people don't understand that. We are preparing a generation in education that isn't developing the skills to be literate in a digital information era. And so I think my issue with that, that's my key concern. The business case isn't really an issue because students already don't take education for learning.
It's not business as in business, because it is ultimately, it's not my concern what universities do with their business. The thing is that everybody will be having this immense amount of knowledge, and probably people on the street are better prepared in that sense than people who are already on the workforce. And that's what makes it kind of weird, to put it in a way. Universities will always be there, but the only purpose that they will serve would be as a validation instrument in the end.
Well, if you look at it this way, and Alfredo wants to tackle the question as well. Let me just put it from this perspective. Take three elements of what a university does fairly well. Content, teaching, and accreditation. There's around that is the research mandate, the knowledge growth for society. But let's just keep that to the side, because technically for most of you, chances are you're interacting around the content, the teaching, and around the accreditation. MIT is a common example, but there's a lot of illustrations of openness 2002, 2003, and certainly it's been growing. I mean, there's hundreds of universities now that offer lectures and courses online. Khan Academy with their short, with his short little lectures and stuff. You look at iTunes U and other illustrations. There's millions of resources available for somebody who wants to learn. So basically, content has been freed up already. Okay, so now we've got one pillar of a three-legged stool that's kind of falling apart. The next pillar is teaching. Well, quite honestly, does it cost us anything extra to put online what we're doing already? I don't think so. I mean, it's getting cheaper and cheaper as we go. But if I'm a faculty member in a university, it costs me literally nothing. If I bring my laptop into the room and I download Audacity, which is a free tool, and I record my presentation and I upload it to my site, it costs me absolutely nothing to record my lectures and make them freely available. Yes, it takes a little more effort if you're going to stream them on Ustream and do video, because it's a little more expensive to do some of those things. But by and large, I can put my content, my teaching activities online, zero cost if I want to. So that leg is kind of a little shaky. It's still there, but technically there's nothing that prevents us from doing that. And if your view of teaching and learning is a lecture, well, that's part of the problem in the first place. Even this session here, right? I mean, there's something, you ideally, it's nice to perhaps start with a few points to get a conversation going, but after that, the conversation needs to move out into a network rather than stay centered on a principal node, even in a session of this nature. So the teaching element is also somewhat, it's not a firm foundation for education in the long run. At least not if teaching is lecture driven. If it's going to be small group experimentation, the way MIT has done with their physics labs now for first year students, that potentially could work. But students shouldn't do in a classroom what they can do online. If they can get the information online before class starts, they shouldn't, they shouldn't be there. You should do different things in classrooms that keep students engaged and involved. So the third leg of this teaching approach is the accreditation. And right now we don't have a suitable model to replace that yet. Maybe we never will. I'm not sure what that could look like in the long run. But for the time being, that is the primary role the university plays for the vast majority of students. And I would suspect has been for quite a while. But Alfredo?
And actually, what Dr. Sims says, I agree with him more than 100%, because I actually started out as a typical university student back in the 70s when I started in chemistry and I became a chemist. Then in the 80s, I decided that I wanted to go into teaching, so I took a I did a master's in pedagogy. And after that, in the early 90s, when internet was there, I thought that would be a great tool to use, and I came to Sacred Heart and made my master's in the program. But then somebody asked me, well, you have so many master's degrees. Why don't you do a PhD? And I told that person, because I don't see any sense in having a PhD, because all I want to do is learn new things. So why do I have to go to another institution just to get a PhD? That's not what I'm looking for. So after that, I've decided that I'm not going to take any more degrees. I'm just going to start learning by myself, because I think I have all the skills that I need to acquire new knowledge. And that's what I'm doing with the course that I'm taking with him and the other professors online right now. So that's my 2 cents worth of what you were asking about. What's the role of an institution, a higher education institution right now? I think that they have to change their purpose. It's not an institution just to get a degree. It's to acquire the skills that you need to become what a few years ago we called a lifelong learner. That's basically it. Once you have that, you have all the skills you need to acquire new knowledge.